Honored guests, welcome, and thank you for attending today's memorial for Dr. Boris Baltes. To begin our tribute to Dr. Baltes, please welcome Wayne State University Interim President Richard A. Biersbach.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here as we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Boris Baltes. Before I do anything else, I want to acknowledge Boris's wife, Dawn, and son, Gavin, here in the audience. I know Kai is away at school, and recognize your strength as a family in dealing with this loss, and express to you again on behalf of the entire university community our condolences for the loss of our dear friend and colleague. I also want to recognize some of the university leadership who are with us today, including the chair of the Board of Governors, Governor Shirley Stancato. Thank you for being here with us today to honor Boris. Look, the fact that there are so many people here today in the middle of the workday on a Wednesday, and I know that there are a lot of people live streaming this who couldn't get away from their desk, that says a lot about how much Boris meant to us. Boris's 27-year impact on Wayne State is really unmatched. Students and faculty and staff across the entire university benefited from his guidance and his leadership and his care for their success and his kindness. Boris meant a great deal to us, I think, maybe because Wayne State and Detroit meant so much to him. He believed deeply in our mission as an urban research university. He took pride in that mission. He took pride in calling this city his home. So whether it was in the classroom or across campus or in everyday life, he was known for that belief. He was known for his kindness, his steadiness, and his genuine care for others. Since joining the Department of Psychology in 1998, which I would say was his first love among many great loves at Wayne State, Boris devoted his career to advancing Wayne State's mission as a leading urban research university. And his work as a teacher and a scholar, and then as senior vice provost for faculty affairs and academic personnel, strengthened us in immeasurable ways, and certainly in lasting ways. What I'll remember most about Boris is how he, maybe more than anybody I've met here, really embodied and lived out our values of excellence, our values of equity, our values of opportunity, and as I've already said, our commitment to the mission. He built community here with thoroughness and dedication. He had a lasting influence as a leader and a colleague, and especially as a friend. And I can say, personally, I worked with Boris for more than 8 years as a dean. In my life as a dean, he was the man with all the answers. He really was, whether it was a faculty promotion issue or a union issue, or you name it, he had the scoop. And he was the person I went to with all of my most challenging issues. And as I walked over here today, I was reflecting on why that was. And there were a lot of reasons, but I'm going to distill it down to 3. One is he had impeccable judgment. He just had really good judgment, no matter how hard the issue was. The second one was he also had a really big heart. And so you could talk to him about a hard issue and he could give you his impeccable judgment, but he did it with a kindness and a big heart that made that conversation easier. And I think that all sort of plays into the third reason, which is no matter how difficult something was, or no matter how frustrated or worried I was when I was about to call Boris, or how much I thought the world was ending, I always felt calmer after talking to him. I always left those conversations, no matter how challenging the subject was, feeling better. Not just better about the result, but better about myself, better about my day. Boris was the model of a great colleague. He had encyclopedic knowledge, he gave spot-on advice, he had a compassionate spirit, and he had a steady and reassuring presence. And there's not a day that's gone by that I haven't missed him since he's been gone. As hard as he worked and as dedicated as he was to the university, I know that Boris also had a very full life outside of the university. And sometimes I wonder whether his ability to move through things with such grace was because, as dedicated as he was to us, he never lost sight of the fact that there are more important things. There were things outside the university that were even more important to him. And to him, I don't know much about what he did, but I do know that the first among those things was his family, which was his greatest joy. On behalf of the university community, I can say that Boris Baltes will never be forgotten by us. His influence will continue in Wayne State's progress and the lives of all of those he supported and inspired, and in the lives of all of those whom this university touches, because he made this university and he made all of us better. So Boris, if you're out there listening, and I hope you are, thank you, and we miss you.
Now, please welcome Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Lori M. Lozon-Clabo.
Good afternoon. It really is an honor to gather with all of you today to remember and celebrate our colleague and friend, Boris Baltes. As someone who worked closely with Boris for more than 10 years, I understand how this is a profoundly personal loss for many of us and for the entire Wayne State campus community. Almost everyone on this campus was touched in some way by Boris or his work. In 1998, Boris joined the Department of Psychology as a faculty member, and he went on to serve in many capacities, including as department chair, as senior vice provost for faculty affairs and academic personnel, and interim dean of both the College of Education and most recently the College of Fine, Performing, and Communication Arts. He's been deeply ingrained in our faculty community for nearly 30 years. And Wayne State is a profoundly better place because of Boris. Today, you're going to hear from colleagues who served with Boris in his many roles across our campus, from a fellow vice provost, from his team, from his colleagues in the Department of Psychology. So many of us have had the honor of working with Boris, and those who did know that he was always a kind and thoughtful presence. He was a trusted colleague. He was reflective and generous and always willing to serve wherever he was needed. Boris was able to combine vision with practicality and leadership with compassion. He was deeply committed to the urban research mission of Wayne State. His legacy of leadership is carried on through all of us at Wayne State who've been mentored and guided by Boris and personally impacted by his dedication to our institution. Boris was an exceptional human being. When I talk to people across campus, they use many of the same words to describe him. He was warm, kind, thoughtful, unflappable, collaborative. Never forget that each of these characteristics was undergirded by a truly exceptional intellect. Boris was the product of academic royalty. His parents were both world-renowned developmental psychologists, and we all came to know who his parents were, but we never learned it from Boris. I recall our former provost, Keith Whitfield, very early after he arrived on campus, nudging me at a meeting, pointing to Boris and saying, "Lori, Do you know who he is? And over this past weekend, Marcus Dixon was telling me that as he was gathering some of Boris's things from his psychology office, he would find books with notes in them that said, "Boris, read chapter 4, love, Dad." And Boris honored and supported his parents' work, including shepherding the foundation that bears their names. But he chose his own path, charting his own academic journey in industrial and organizational psychology. And you'll hear more about his outstanding scholarly work from his colleagues in the department in a few minutes. But this community is so fortunate that Boris found his academic home at Wayne State. For me, over the course of 2 tours in the office of the Provost, I had the privilege of serving very closely with Boris in his role as Senior Vice Provost. He was a source of the wisest counsel and a trusted colleague and confidant. Boris could juggle multiple complex projects seamlessly and seemingly with great ease. He had the most organized mind I have ever met, which was in pretty stark contrast with his messy office. In fact, it always made me chuckle that in every Teams meeting with Boris, in the background, you could see, perched on the top of the filing cabinet behind him, a can of furniture polish. I can attest today with 100% certainty that it was never touched. Boris loved his work here, but he loved his family more. Dawn, Gavin, Kai, we all came to know you through him. We heard of each of your successes, your weekend adventures, a few mishaps, and your amazing family trips. He was so proud of his sons. And Dawn, we all know that you were the love of his life and the center of his universe. He literally lit up when he spoke of you. Late in August, there was a week when Boris and I were working closely together on a number of big projects, and one of them was pretty sticky. But it was very, very clear that Boris's most important assignment that week was dusting off his editing skills to be able to remix your wedding video as a 30th anniversary gift for you, and he was so proud of the final product. Thank you to the 3 of you for sharing him with us and for allowing us to be a small part of your lives as well. So Boris and I are both early morning people, and most mornings I could count on his head popping into my office door along with that ever-present thermos of coffee, and he'd say, "Hey, Lori, got a minute?" It was almost always the best part of my day. We would sit and we would talk about what we were working on, challenging issues we were facing. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but in those meetings, we would solve all the problems of the university and the world. I have learned recently, though, that he conducted a similar, if a little less frequent process with a small group of close colleagues from psychology, but that those meetings occurred after work and off campus, and that the beverage of choice was definitely not coffee. I miss those morning chats more than I can ever describe, but I am so incredibly grateful to have had them. And I miss him, my friend and colleague, but I am so grateful for the gift of his presence. Dawn, Gavin, Kai, we will honor him here by continuing to do the good work that he expected of us every day. And we are all better because he was here.
Please welcome Vice Provost for Academic Programs, Assessment, and Accreditation, Darren Ellis.
Thank you, President Bierschbach and Provost Clable, and thank you all for being here. To Don, Gavin, Kai, and the whole family here and abroad, on behalf of our campus community, please let me add my condolences. We're here because Boris loved Wayne State, and Wayne State loved him back, didn't we? Boris was one of the kindest, most dedicated, and wise people I've ever known. He was a wonderful colleague and a close friend. You may not know, but he was a German immigrant. And from time to time, he would share a word of German, sometimes a long compound word, that conveyed a depth of meaning that wasn't readily available to us in English. I wish the German language had one of those long compound words to capture what our friendship meant to me. It would probably translate something like walking buddy, confidant, big brother colleague. I had the privilege of knowing Boris for his entire 27 years at Wayne State and working closely with him these past 8. As the provost mentioned, he became chair of psychology in 2014, and he quickly earned university-wide respect as a leader. When the associate provost for academic personnel position opened in 2018, his name was on everyone's lips, especially mine. And we were really fortunate that he said yes to the call. I gained a stellar associate provost peer and very quickly a dear friend. His wisdom, insight, and constant desire to make things better here were something that my colleagues and I admired and relied upon. Whether it was dealing with huge issues like the pandemic or day-to-day challenges of leading a complex institution, he was a lighthouse shining in the fog. His exemplary leadership eventually earned him the title of Senior Vice Provost. As his colleague on the provost staff, I can attest that he didn't actually need the senior part. We all just knew. Many of you knew him in one of those prominent leadership roles, chair, associate provost, interim dean, senior vice provost, but at heart, Boris was always a faculty member. We've heard a little bit of that so far, but I have to admit that when he arrived on campus, I introduced myself to him and fanboyed a little bit because I knew the work of his parents from my graduate studies at Penn State. And I just knew he was going to do great things here, and that the psychology department had a real catch. The only thing surprising about his stellar career in the department is that we actually got to keep him here, because he was one of those academic leaders that I think could have gone just about any place he wanted to. You'll hear more from his department colleagues about the scholarly contributions and recognition. And of course, if you haven't had a chance, please look at the awards and stuff on the tables outside. But I'm also a faculty member in the College of Engineering. And just from that perspective, I mean, going as far back as I can remember to my very first PhD student, I made all of them take his statistics classes. He was brilliant. He was a brilliant methodologist, and he didn't just teach them how to analyze data. He taught them how to think, how to choose and frame a good question in a way that you could get meaningful answers. Boris really liked a good walk. Hiking with his family was one of his favorite activities. He would tell the stories of like which national park they were going to go to or where they went on the weekend. He really, really liked that. Roughly paraphrasing the poet Emerson, a good walk requires an appreciation of your surroundings, good humor, vast curiosity, good conversation, and good silence. Walking with Boris was something I always looked forward to. Boris really knew how to have a good walk. I learned a lot about Boris on our many walks. First, I learned he loved his family, and that was the most important thing to him. He was really at his happiest when he was telling me about them. I also learned he was the best kind of leader whose kindness went hand in hand with strength and vision. He believed ideas matter more than just authority. He was very proud of his team's work. All the work that you do supporting faculty and chairs and deans. He believed deeply in equity and justice and personally worked to change some of the aspects of the academy that unfairly disadvantaged some of our colleagues. Even in the most difficult and charged issues he had to deal with, dignity and respect came first. He had boundless curiosity and admiration for all of his colleagues across campus, and I know he was cheering for all of you as hard as he cheered for his favorite sports teams. If he and I could have one more walk, I'd say this. Thank you, Boris. Thank you for the miles we walked together, both literally and figuratively. Thank you for the smiles when I was down, for the steady presence when I was upset, and the encouragement when I was uncertain. Thanks for the happiness that you brought your job and the happiness you brought to everyone around you. And thanks for being here with us. You were the best friend and colleague a guy could wish for, and it was an honor to know you. May his memory be a blessing.
Now please welcome Associate Director for Faculty Affairs, Charlene Brain, and Faculty Affairs Coordinator, Jake Wilson.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Office of Faculty Affairs and Development, Jake, Sarah, Maria, Joe, and myself, thank you for this opportunity to honor Dr. Boris Baltes, who at this moment I can hear saying in our first meeting together, Dr. Baltes, that's my parents, please. I'm just Boris. Boris, he was our colleague, our leader, and our friend. To say that we are saddened at his sudden passing doesn't even begin to fully capture our emotions. However, we will always be grateful for the way he shaped our work, our thinking, and our lives here at Wayne State and in the city of Detroit. Boris was steady, generous, and deeply human. He could take a good-natured ribbing and laugh right along with you. He was fiercely loyal, quick with a grin, had this little snort in his laugh. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. He loved this place and led with a simple conviction of people first. In conversations and when problem solving, he was a thoughtful partner, making sure things were done equitably and with an eye towards everyone's well-being and success. Opportunities to navigate sensitive situations and address complicated issues are plentiful in our office. Boris's ability to appear calm and think strategically under pressure was uncanny. And during those heavy moments, he brought a light touch, not to dismiss the difficulty, but to make it bearable. In a room, he could tell when someone was invested in an idea. He'd gently Zoom out, ask a clear question, help us set our defenses aside, and see the big picture and all work together collaboratively. He was direct without being harsh, and honest without wounding. And after those moments of tenseness, he was reflective, taking time to analyze the interactions and think about how he could do or be better the next time. He was funny, thoughtful, and regarded the whole person. He brought people together, paired with empathy and transparency. He used his position to open doors for others and bring people together. He worked hard and he cared deeply.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I've had the pleasure of working with Boris since he joined the Provost office back in 2018. Over the last 7 years, he has taught us what it meant to be a kind and generous person. He always made time for us, didn't expect anyone to work themselves to the bone, and always expected us to think well together. He led with questions, guiding us to our own conclusions rather than handing them down. There was never a big ego about him, even when we reminded him how big of shoes they are for him, and he never acted like it. He worked quickly and efficiently, but he preferred human connection over email. Many of us got the unexpected, got a minute over Teams chat, and he would always call us real quick to make sure we had time for a brief call. He always kept it brief, and he didn't take more than he needed. And when the work part was done, he'd ask about life. He lit up talking about ski trips and hikes with Don, Gavin, and Kai, and is proudest of being a husband and a father, and you can see the light in his eyes when he spoke about them. Boris' legacy at Wayne State is bigger than any single title. He made our culture clearer, kinder, more collaborative, and people-centered. He brought evidence and empathy to us and insisted on equity and transparency and strengthened the scaffolding that helped faculty and staff do their best. His legacy lives in us. He invested in our growth, asked questions to help us find our own answers, backing us in hard rooms and nudging us towards courage over confidence. I'm sorry, I'm struggling. Because of Boris, he'd take bigger swings and pick up the phone rather than hiding behind email, and he always shows clarity over speed. We will carry that forward to center people over process when it counts, to lead with candor and care, and to measure our success by how people are treated along the way. Our office's commitment going forward to the university is fairness, inclusiveness, and consistency so that the work he cared about continues. To each other, we continue to commit empathy, listening, and solving problems together the way that he had taught us. To Don, Gavin, and Kai, and to the rest of Boris's family, let his memory guide us. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today to honor this great man.
Now welcome Professor of Behavioral, Cognitive Neuroscience, and Psychology Department Chair, Scott E. Bowman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. As it was announced, I'm Scott Bowen. I'm currently serving as a department chair of psychology and as professor of behavioral and cognitive neuroscience. Boris and I came to Wayne State about the same time. I arrived in 1997. Boris joined the department in 1998. You might expect that two psychologists would naturally collaborate, but our research plans were quite different. I focused on neuroscience of drug abuse while Boris made his mark in industrial organizational psychology, exploring work-family balance, the impact of stereotypes in the workplace, and age-related issues. And I'm sure, as Marcus will probably mention, he was excellent at it. I was outstanding. It was not until later that I had the pleasure of working directly with Boris as we began serving on committees together and seeing more of each other in the department. He would occasionally mention some teams, football teams that weren't in the Southeastern Conference, so I didn't really pay attention. We actually found some common ground in our research and later actually co-authored a meta-analysis paper, which probably some of you are really amazed that happened. Working with Boris on that paper was an experience that I will remember fondly. He taught me a lot about meta-analysis and statistics. I came to know Boris on a more personal level when he stepped into the role of interim chair in 2014, which was a particularly challenging time for our department. To his credit, Boris brought calm, steady leadership when we needed it most, and because of that, he eventually became department chair. During that time, there was a policy and advisory committee meeting that I will never forget. After some lengthy discussions about our struggling IO program, I suggested that it might be time to let that program go. His love, his baby, the IO program, the room went silent. I was really worried. However, Boris took that opportunity or challenge to help guide us, me, through the moment and underscore the importance of the IO program. Because of his leadership, thoughtful insights, and the outstanding research that he and others have done in that program, the IO program remains strong today within the department, a true testament to Boris's vision and perseverance. When Boris became Associate Provost for Faculty Affairs in 2018, he asked me to consider stepping in as interim chair. I obviously declined. But in true Boris fashion, he simply talked with me several times, never pushed the subject, and eventually helped me see the potential of taking the position. Eventually, I agreed. After accepting, we went one morning to discuss the duties and responsibilities of the position. But instead of diving into all these tasks, Boris spent most of the morning asking me about my well-being and my family. I recently heard a similar story from Emily Grecken, who had lost her father right before she accepted the position of associate chair in our department. Boris again spent that orientation session talking more about Emily and her father, understanding the pain that she must have been feeling and wanting to express his deepest sympathy, not only as a colleague, but as a friend. That was Boris. He led with empathy. As I assumed the chair position, Boris gave me everything I needed to succeed: clear documentation, thoughtful guidance, and unwavering support. For almost 8 years, he continued to check in regularly, whether popping into the office or calling me on Teams 2 to 3 times a week. He told me on more than one occasion that I was the best chair the department ever had. Although I don't agree with that, I will never forget how much that meant to me. Boris was an extraordinary colleague, a compassionate leader, and a very dear friend. I'm truly better for having knowing him for this past 27 years. I'm going to close, I'll close with one last memory. As the provost mentioned, Boris, Marcus, and I would meet regularly off campus, usually at a bar, with alcohol, to try and solve the Wayne State's problems and the world's problems as well. While our conversation started with policy, and I can still hear him say, "It's funny you should mention that," which then went into a lengthy discussion about something, our conversations often drifted to family. To Don, Gavin, and Kai, Boris spoke of you quite often with very deep love and affection and pride. His family was his greatest love. Thank you.
Honored guests, please welcome Professor of Psychology, Marcus Dixon.
Good afternoon. As said, my name is Marcus Dixon, and I'm a professor of the program that Scott tried to kill in IO psychology, which was Boris's home unit. Like me, when Boris arrived at Wayne State in 1998, he thought he would be here for a few years and move on. It's not uncommon in academic careers, and as we've heard, it's not uncommon at all in IO psychology. But he found a professional home here and a university that supported him and that he supported and loved in turn. We know, all of us know, that Wayne State is a strongly mission-oriented university. Not perfectly so, but our mission is built into what we do, and that mattered to Boris, as we've heard. Boris wanted to be here. He could have been elsewhere, but he wanted to be here. He wanted to stay here, and he wanted to play a role in helping lead the campus forward. He did that well. He loved this university with all of its wonders and with all of its flaws. After spending 27 years here, he was neither jaded nor naive, but instead remained realistically committed to all the things that we do here. Now, before all of that administrative stuff, Boris was pretty happy as a faculty member. He was doing good research, and he was teaching courses in statistics, as we've heard, and in personnel selection and other topics that he enjoyed. And then at a time when the psychology department was in turmoil, as Scott mentioned, Boris was asked to step in and provide leadership. He did. That was the first of several times that he was interim something, and one of many times that he stepped into roles where he was needed. If I had to provide a list of traits for Boris, willing to step in and provide leadership when asked would be near the top. Boris was a heck of a scholar. He was an industrial organizational psychologist, and that was deep within him. And he was very well regarded. He was elected to the status of Fellow of the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, as well as the American Psychological Association. And he did research that mattered. We've had several mentions of that research already. He supervised about 20 students through their PhDs before he moved into full-time administration, and several of those made the journey to be here today. More than all of that, though, Boris was a hell of a guy. In 27 years, the only times that we really argued, as I've mentioned to some of the folks here before, the only times we ever really argued was when I was full of righteous indignation at something that the administration had done. And I wanted to make sure that they knew why what they had done was unacceptable and quite probably unforgivable. And when he became chair, I wanted him to lead that when we stormed the castle to take on the administration when they were wrong. That was never his approach. Instead, he calmed tempers. He took a long view, and he made the best out of the situation. That's not to say that he didn't advocate hard. He did advocate hard. But he wasn't willing to sacrifice long-term relationships over short-term emotion. Now, I got to be clear, I don't think he was always right. But I do think he was right more often than not. Just as a quick side note, I mentioned to the Baltes family when we were visiting that Boris would never storm the castle the way I wanted. And Kai started laughing. And I said, what's this? And he said, every time we play Dungeons and Dragons, he always storms the castle. He's always attacking. So I'm sure there's a psychological term for that somewhere. The most common thing that I've heard from friends and colleagues when they learned about Boris' death is some variation of the phrase, which I've heard 3 times today just in talking to people, a variation of the phrase, he was a good one. They don't say it in a cliche way. They say it with emphasis, with the implication that he was also a rare one. When they say it, they mean it. It's something that they know deeply. I'm grateful to have had the chance to know that for 27 years, and I know that each person here knew it for as long as you knew him. To conclude, I've been asked to convey 3 things in my remarks here. The first is that a fund has been created with the goal of establishing a named memorial for Boris. We aren't sure exactly what form of the memorial it will be, as that depends on the amount raised. But the intention is to ensure that Boris's name continues to be part of the university in ways that will last and that will allow us to tell Boris stories for a long time. More information on that will come out soon, and the QR code there allows you to link to that directly now. I made my donation earlier today, and I hope that you'll consider doing so as well. The second thing I've been asked to convey is that there's a reception starting momentarily out in the atrium. Now, in our graduate program, all of the faculty and students are empowered to declare a meeting of the minds, which sounds very impressive. And what it actually means is it's a call to everyone to come out to the bar and hang out together and drink beer and talk. Boris was the original promoter of calling meetings of the minds, and he was a fan of all three of those things, of hanging out, of drinking beer, and of just talking together. There may not be beer in the atrium, but there is a chance to hang out and talk together and to remember Boris. The third thing is on behalf of Dawn, Gavin, Kai, his sister Anushka, stepmother Christine, of the university as well, to thank all of you for coming, to those connected on the live stream, to thank you for joining us as well. I will now bring this time of remembrance to a close, and on Boris' behalf, declare a meeting of the minds. Thank you.
Thank you for attending today's tribute. Now please join us for a reception in the Community Arts Atrium.